The top 10 most shocking WrestleMania match outcomes continues. Last week, it was the Macho King and the Ultimate Warrior career-ending match at WrestleMania 7, and all of the post-match drama that came afterwards. This week, we flash forward for number 7 on the list to Madison Square Garden for WrestleMania 10 and the greatest opening match in WrestleMania history between Bret the Hitman Hart and his brother Owen. One of the greatest WrestleMania matches, period. Not just opening matches. Owen Hart was a great wrestler. I don't think there could be any denying that. Owen Hart was a great wrestler. But on television, that's all he was. When he first joined the company in those early years, he had no personality. He was not able to show his sense of humor, his personality. He was as bland could be from a personality standpoint. He had a run as the Blue Blazer first in the late 80s, left, came back, and was paired off with Jim Neidhart as the new foundation. How original. That lasted all of 2 months before Neidhart got fired. Then came High Energy with Koko Beware. He wrestled in baggy pants 3 times too big. Fast forward to 1993. Vince McMahon comes to Bret, says, I got an idea. We're going to do a sibling rivalry storyline. He wants him to feud with one of his brothers, culminating in a match at WrestleMania 10. That brother was not originally supposed to be Owen Hart. Instead, it was going to be Bret's brother Bruce. And Bret liked the storyline idea, but he was not sold on Bruce being the person for the role, because he knew that Bruce was not the best wrestler of the brothers. He knew Owen was better. And Bruce was also, I think, older and maybe a little more beat up. He wanted Owen for the role, because he knew that, again, Owen was a better wrestler than Bruce, and he just felt like this angle is going to work a lot better, and it would be huge for Owen's career, and he thought he could have better matches with him. So when he suggested Owen initially, Pat Patterson was against the idea. He argued against it. He thought it should be Bruce. Bret stood his ground, and eventually Vince agreed. We would have gotten a very different feud had it been Bruce Hart instead of Owen Hart against Bret. Survivor Series 93, set to be Bret, Owen, Bruce, and Keith, the Hart brothers, with their father, the patriarch, Stu, at ringside in their corner, taking on Jerry Lawler and his Knights, his Royal Knights, since Lawler had been feuding with Bret and mocking his parents for months on television. But then Lawler got indicted on charges of rape and sodomy of an underage girl. They were eventually dropped, not because the girl recanted, but because she didn't want to testify against Lawler, so the whole thing got dropped. But this happened less than 2 weeks before the pay-per-view. So instead, they reinstated Shawn Michaels, who had been suspended. They reinstated him, and he took Lawler's place, captaining the Knights. It made no sense, having Shawn Michaels out there with a bunch of guys in night costumes, looking like they're working a night out at fucking medieval times or something. But there it is, Shawn Michaels and the Knights. And if Royal Rumble 92 is Bobby Heenan's greatest performance at the announce desk, which, by the way, it is, then I would argue that this here at Survivor Series 93 might be number 2. He spent the entire... and this, by the way, was his last pay-per-view. A few weeks later, he got kicked out of Monday Night Raw. He spent the entire match mercilessly mocking all of the brothers, the entire Hart family, even Stu. Stu was ringside for the match. I think at one point he was yelling. He's like, excuse me, he stood up. He's like yelling, Stu, wake up. Like, just mercilessly going after these guys. Basically taking the mantle from Lawler, who was doing that for months. And I think my favorite line of many, my favorite Heenan line was when Bruce tagged in. And he's talking about Bruce Hart, and he just goes, they had 9 months, and the best they could come up with was Bruce. When I first heard that line, I busted a gut laughing. Bobby was the freaking best, man. But this is where they shot the angle where it started it all. With Owen, he inadvertently hit Bret. He was running the ropes, and Bret was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he collided with his brother and knocked Bret off the apron into the guardrail, and everybody rushes over to Bret. All the other brothers rush over to Bret to check on him to see if he's okay, and all Owen is concerned about, he's not concerned about Bret. He's standing there going, what are you doing? What are you even on the apron for? What are you guys doing? Hey, what about me? And meantime, he gets rolled up and pinned by Shawn Michaels. Owen was the only Hart brother in that match to be eliminated. Everybody else survived except him. And he pitched a fit and he stormed off. And when the match was over and the Harts won, Owen came back out. He grabbed Bret. He shoved him. There was a big shoving match between them. And the funniest part about this, if you go back and you really watch, pay attention to Bruce. You can tell how completely disinterested he is in doing anything, because clearly he's very bitter about Owen getting the spot that was intended for him. I mean, it's you watch this and it's so obvious. Watching it back, he wants no part of this. He's sort of standing off. Then I think he disappeared. He did not want to be there. So after this, Bret and Owen, they patched things up just in time for the holidays, the Christmas holiday. I remember there's vignettes of them. Everything's great. We're going to be a tag team now. We're going to challenge the Quebecers for the tag team titles at the Royal Rumble. And they go to the Rumble, and that's where Bret hurt his leg. And, in storyline, he hurt his leg, and they lost the match. And Owen is just furious because now all he wanted was a tag. Bret wouldn't tag. And they lost. And Owen flipped his shit. And, of course, that's where he kicked Bret's leg out of his leg after the match. And he challenged Bret to a match. Bret refused. Bret did not want to fight his brother. He just could not bring himself to do it. Clearly, they borrowed from this for the Undertaker and Kane angle in '97 when Kane debuted. And Undertaker refused to even raise a hand to his brother. He would just let Kane beat the shit out of him on television. Refused to wrestle him, refused to fight his brother until finally he did. And of course, that's what happened here. The situation was that Bret was going to have to fight Owen at the beginning of the WrestleMania show and then come back out later in the night and wrestle the winner of the Lex Luger-Yokozuna match. So the point is that either Luger or Bret, one of them, would have to wrestle twice in the same night. So Bret had to face his brother. So they made the match, and that led to one of the more shocking match outcomes in WrestleMania history with Owen Hart, who had not done squat up to this point in his WWE career. As the Blazer, as High Energy, as the New Foundation, as just the Rocket, Owen Hart, he had done nothing. He was a good wrestler, great wrestler, and that was it. And for the first time, he was finally having the spotlight shone down upon him. And it was shocking that here's a guy who's not done anything. Not only does he beat his brother, a former tag team champion, IC champion, WWF champion, Royal Rumble winner, King of the Ring winner. Bret did it all. Maybe only the second true Grand Slam winner in the company, second only to Pedro Morales, who I just got done talking about last week. Bret did it all. All the different accomplishments that you could do, he did. And here's Owen Hart, not only beating him, but pinning him clean to open the show at WrestleMania. This guy who is going to wrestle for the championship later that night in the main event is pinned by his little brother. And that victory roll finish that they did in the corner was so great. The victory roll counter, such a great finish. And it's just too bad that Owen had that big wad of spit on the side of his mouth when the match was over. When Todd Pettengill interviewed him backstage when he came through the curtain, he still hadn't wiped it away. You would think that the referee or somebody would have told him about it, but who knows? Owen was a prankster. For all I know, he did it on purpose. Maybe he wanted it there. But Owen pinning Bret was shocking. I don't know how shocking it would be today. It does make sense that he would beat Bret to set himself up as a challenger for the championship coming out of WrestleMania that summer, which is what they did. It does make sense. It shouldn't be all that shocking, I guess, when you really stop and think about it. But it was. It shocked the hell out of me as a kid. It shocked the hell out of a lot of other people, too. Shocked the hell out of that crowd at the Garden. The man who would go on to win the world title later on that night was pinned clean at the start of the show. And it was great, too, because when Bret won the championship and they had this big celebration in the ring, Owen walked back out. He never got into the ring, But he stood in the aisle. They got a big close-up of his face, and you could see him be like, what about me? He was appalled. I beat you. Why is the attention still on you? Why are you the champion? I should be the champion. It was a great story. It really was. And Bret had not been pinned clean like that in the middle of the ring since probably the Bulldog pinned him at Wembley Stadium at SummerSlam 2 years earlier. Bret only lost the title to Yokozuna at WrestleMania 9 because Fuji threw salt in his eyes. Otherwise, Bret hadn't really lost that I could think of. I can't remember another match he just lost fair and square during that run. They actually protected him pretty well, all things considered. But this put Owen on the map. This made him a star in one night. Bret made his brother's career by putting him over. No wonder Bruce was upset. I would be too if I were him. But the younger brother living in the shadow of his older brother, it's an easy story, I think, for people with siblings to buy into. A lot of people can relate. I mean, not me. I am the older brother. My brother is 4.5 years younger than me. He'll never outgrow my shadow. He knows that. I mean, I'm the Solomonster. Come on now. But it's an easy story, I think, that people can relate to. And one of the all-time great storylines that they've really ever done, I think, in the company. Owen beating Bret is just one of the greatest upsets in WWE history. It was a brilliant angle. It led to the King of Hearts gimmick for Owen. And when he won the King of the Ring, the greatest steel cage match in WWE history at SummerSlam that year. That's my favorite cage match. And so I can't say enough good things about what they did here.